A silverback gorilla stands in a forest clearing with 8 females around him. He is nearly twice their size. He didn't get there by being liked. He got there by being the only male standing after every other male who challenged him for this troop either fled or lost. 200 meters away, in the canopy, a pair of gibbons calls back and forth across the treetops, a duet they perform together most mornings. They are almost exactly the same size. They have one mate. They have had one mate for years. 2 mating systems, sitting in the same forest, and if you only looked at their bodies, you could tell which was which without watching either one for a single day. Gorilla anatomy is built for harems. Gibbon anatomy is built for pairs. The body keeps the receipts. So here's the question. If you lined up a human next to both of them and covered every face, which pattern would the human body match? If this is already landing, subscribe and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Most people assume the answer is obvious, one way or the other. Either ancient humans were basically monogamous, one partner, one hearth, forever, or they were basically opportunistic, mating with whoever was around. And monogamy is a recent invention we layered on top of an older, messier reality. Both of those answers feel tidy. Neither one survives contact with the evidence. Because the truth is that scientists don't have to guess at this by reading old bones and hoping. They can read it directly off the living human body, the same way they'd read it off a gorilla or a gibbon, because mating systems leave physical fingerprints that don't wash off over evolutionary time. Body size differences between males and females, testicle size relative to body weight, the rhythm of female fertility itself. All of it is data. All of it was shaped by how many partners our ancestors actually had, over hundreds of thousands of generations, whether they liked the outcome or not. And when you actually read that data point by point, it doesn't hand you a clean answer, it hands you a contradiction, and that contradiction is the most interesting part of the story. Start with body size, because it's the easiest signal to read and the one primatologists check first in any species. Male gorillas outweigh females by anywhere from 66 to 146%, depending on the population, nearly double in extreme cases. And that gap exists because gorilla males fight each other for exclusive access to a harem. And bigger wins. Male chimpanzees, who mate more promiscuously in multi-male, multi-female groups, run 11 to 32% heavier than females. Gibbons, genuinely monogamous, are about 10% apart, barely distinguishable by size at all. Humans sit at roughly 15 to 16%, heavier on average, but only just. And that number is far closer to the gibbon end of the scale than the gorilla end. Read in isolation, that number is telling you something specific. It's telling you that human males were not fighting it out for exclusive harems the way gorillas were. The competition, whatever it looked like, was not primarily about raw physical domination winning a monopoly on females. That would be a tidy place to stop the story. Pair bonded, case closed. Except the body has a second signal, and it doesn't agree. Move from body size to testicles, because this is where the story gets complicated, and where the science has actually settled on real numbers rather than impressions. Testicle size scales with something specific. How often a female is likely to have more than one male's sperm in her reproductive tract at the same time? Gorilla males, guaranteed exclusive access to their harem, have testes about the size of a kidney bean. There's no competition to prepare for, so evolution never bothered to build for it. Chimpanzee males whose females mate with multiple partners during a single fertile window have testes 3 to 10 times larger relative to body size, closer to a tennis ball, built to produce overwhelming volume because winning happens inside the female's body, not outside it, in a contest between one male's sperm and another's. Human testicles land in between those two, but here's the specific number. About 3 times larger relative to body weight than a gorilla's, and roughly 1/5 the relative size of a chimpanzee's. Not nothing. Not nowhere near a gorilla's near total absence of sperm competition. A real, measurable middle ground that researchers describe as evidence of moderate but genuine sperm competition throughout human evolutionary history. Which only makes sense under one condition, that human females, at least some of the time, were mating with more than one male close enough together that their sperm actually had to compete. So now you have 2 body parts telling 2 different stories. The skeleton says pair bonded, mostly. The testicles say competition happened, at least sometimes. Researchers still argue over exactly how to reconcile those 2 signals. And that argument itself is worth sitting with for a second, because it means the honest answer to "were ancient humans monogamous" was never going to be a single word. That's roughly the midpoint of where I want to take this. There's a third body signal, the strangest one. and the one that actually starts to explain why human females would mate outside a pair bond, even while the species trended toward long-term partnerships, plus the ethnographic record, the genetic evidence buried in the Y chromosome, and a claim from the Amazon that will sound impossible until you see the logic behind it. There's a third body signal, and it's the strangest one, because it's not about anatomy at all. It's about timing. In most primates, females are only sexually receptive during a narrow, visibly advertised fertile window. Swelling, coloring, unmistakable. Ovulation is a public announcement. In humans, that signal is almost entirely gone. Women are receptive across most of the cycle, and even trained researchers using hormonal assays struggle to pinpoint ovulation from behavior alone. Evolutionary biologists still debate exactly why concealed ovulation evolved. Competing explanations point to reducing infanticide risk, encouraging sustained male investment, or making paternity harder for any single male to monopolize. But whatever the original driver, the effect is consistent. A system where no male, including a long-term partner, could fully police or guarantee exclusive access. That's not a system built purely for monogamy. It's a system built for ambiguity. And ambiguity, biologically speaking, keeps options open on both sides. Now step outside the body and into the historical record, because this is where the picture either confirms the biology or breaks it. Anthropologists working from Murdoch's Ethnographic Atlas, a catalog of marriage practices across more than 1,200 documented human societies, found that roughly 85% permitted a man to take more than one wife in some form. That number gets repeated constantly, and it sounds like a verdict. It isn't one, and here's the honest hedge. Permission is not the same as practice. In the large majority of those same polygynous societies, most men were still practically monogamous, simply because taking a second wife required resources, status, or land that most men never had. Multiple partners were culturally allowed and economically rare, a possibility available mainly to the successful few, not a lived reality for the average person. If this video is giving you something to think about, subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps us keep making content like this. Here's the finding that sounds impossible until you see the logic underneath it. Across at least 18 documented societies in lowland South America, ethnographers have recorded a belief anthropologists call partible paternity, the idea that a child can have more than one biological father, because every man who has sex with a pregnant woman is believed to contribute to building the child inside her. Among peoples like the Bari of Venezuela, this isn't a myth on the margins. It structures real behavior, with a woman naming secondary fathers who then take on provisioning duties toward the child. And the part that should stop you cold is the outcome data. Researchers studying the Aceh of Paraguay found that children recognized as having a second father were significantly more likely to survive to adulthood, largely because violence, not disease, was the leading cause of child death, and a second father meant a second protector. Multiple partners here wasn't a breakdown of the family. It was, in a specific and measurable sense, a survival strategy built directly into the family. Now the genetic record, because it adds a twist that most people never hear about. Around 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, geneticists studying the Y chromosome found something strange. Male genetic diversity across Europe, Asia, and Africa collapsed sharply, while female diversity, tracked through mitochondrial DNA, kept climbing steadily the whole time. At the low point, some populations show an effective ratio of roughly 17 reproducing women for every one reproducing man. Read quickly. That sounds like proof of ancient harems on a massive scale. Read carefully. The timing gives it away. This collapse lines up almost exactly with the rise of agriculture, inherited wealth, and social hierarchy, not with the deep hunter-gatherer past. The leading explanation isn't that Paleolithic men were broadly hoarding partners. It's that once farming created land you could own and pass down, a small number of wealthy, powerful men began fathering a disproportionate share of children, while most men fathered few or none. Multiple partners. At that kind of scale, wasn't humanity's baseline. It was what happened once inequality gave a handful of men the means to act on an old capacity the species had carried all along. Go back to the gorilla and the gibbon. That comparison was supposed to give you a clean answer, one silhouette the human body would match. It doesn't work that way, and now you know why. The skeleton reads closer to gibbon. Modest size difference. A species built more for lasting partnerships than harem combat. The testicles read partway toward chimpanzee. Real evidence of sperm competition, meaning exclusivity was never absolute. The reproductive cycle reads as neither: concealed, ambiguous, built to make paternity a question rather than a certainty. Ancient humans weren't secretly one thing dressed up as another. The body itself is a mix, because the mating system it was built for was never fixed. It was facultative, capable of leaning pair-bonded when resources were tight and partners scarce, capable of leaning multiple when resources were abundant, status was uneven, or a second protector could keep a child alive. That flexibility isn't a contradiction in the evidence. It is the evidence. Humans didn't evolve a mating system. They evolved the capacity to run more than one, depending on what the environment and the group actually required to survive. So the next time someone tells you confidently that ancient humans were naturally monogamous, or just as confidently that they were naturally promiscuous, you can hold both claims up next to the actual record and watch neither one survive intact. The truth was never a single word. It was a strategy, adjusted generation by generation, body by body, situation by situation, sometimes one partner for life, sometimes several, sometimes a second father chosen specifically because a child's survival depended on it. That flexibility, not any single arrangement, is what actually got our species this far. The gorilla is locked into his harem. The gibbon is locked into his duet. You are not locked into anything. You carry the option for both, written into a body that never fully decided, because deciding was never the point. Staying alive was. Thank you for watching. More videos are on your screen now, and if you haven't already, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.